We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That's interesting.
Thank you. And Christy, if you could please call the roll.
Jim Green,
Here.
Chuck Lee,
Here.
Chris Brantley,
Here.
Jeff Faybill will be running late, Rick Kimball,
Here.
Paul Kylo,
Here.
Nancy McMorris Audix here.
Okay, board members, any agenda modifications in the agenda that you were sent in your board plate? All right, we'll move on to Spotlights on Success.
We're pleased to have 4 presentations this evening highlighting success in the Salem-Keizer School District. And the first presenter is Karina Lee, the Executive Director of the Salem-Keizer Education Foundation.
Good evening. It is with great honor that we are proud to present the Volunteer of the Month Award. Shirley Elementary staff has nominated our selected Volunteers of the Month, and I would right now like to ask to come in front is Carrie Hare, Laura Pearson, Pam Chuck, and of course their wonderful principal, Mr. Gernrich. Right up there with Jim Green. Carrie Hare, Laura Pearson, and Pam Chuck volunteered at Shirley Elementary for 3 months this past summer to help develop and manage Shirley's new summer library program. These 3 volunteers partnered with Oregon Ask, After School for Kids, the National Summer Learning Association, and the Salem Library to promote this service for the Shirley Elementary School community. Carrie, Laura, and Pam would go to the school and open the library up to students to check out books and provide interesting programming that included guest readers and crafts and other programs for the students and their younger siblings. They also passed out free books donated by Bazillion Books for Kids of the Salem-Keizer Education Foundation to Shirley students as well. With the help of Carrie and Laura and Pam, the school was able to open the library every Tuesday from 10 a.m. to noon during the months of June, July, and August. Thank you for your hard work and your support of Salem-Keizer students. Congratulations.
Mary Paulson, Chief of Staff, will present the Business Partner Award.
Good evening. It is my pleasure to let you know that the Business Partner of the Month is Uptown Music, and I would like to ask Paul Elliott and Shane Hall, along with Principal John Honey and Jim Taylor, to join the board chair, please. Uptown Music is our Business Partner of the Month. They were nominated by McNary High School staff member Jim Taylor. Uptown Music has provided amazing support for many projects and activities at McNary. With the support and encouragement of owner Jim Nardi, manager Paul Elliott, and assistant manager Shane Hall, Uptown Music has been wholly invested in seeing McNary's Fine Arts program become truly outstanding. In the last several years, Uptown Music has been incredibly engaged with providing time, services, and resources to McNary. Here are some examples of their partnership. Uptown Music worked with Roland Electronic Piano Corporation to secure, at a tremendous discount, 12 electronic pianos for the McNary Piano and Theory Lab. These pianos are able to split in 2 so that they can teach up to 24 students at a time in the lab. At a fundraising event known as a Night of Arts, featuring all of McNary's fine arts programs, Uptown Music has been either their largest cash sponsor or has donated items for the auction in the live auction component. With Uptown Music's assistance, McNary has been able to replace nearly every aspect of their sound system in the theater and now have a state-of-the-art digital soundboard, superb speakers with maximum flexibility for whatever event is being held, with service and training beyond compare. Boy, I think they like you guys. In addition, the McNary's nomination state is never without support in the repair or replacement of items needed. In fact, they have such a close relationship with Paul and Shane that they are literally able to call at any hour of the day and diagnose or repair or replace so that the show can always go on. Uptown Music constantly supports and advertises McNary's concerts, shows, and events, as well as selling their CDs on the shelf at their shop counter. Most recently, McNary opened their very own in-house studio, and Uptown Music has been a huge partner, offering McNary at items at cost or finding used items in the community to build up the studio gear, or they have donated items so McNary can move ahead in the process. Of course, Uptown Music offers rental equipment, which supports McNary's band and orchestra students, offering private lessons so students can have a greater focus on their skill development as individuals, and open mic nights so kids can put those skills and instruments to test. Uptown Music has truly been a partner in supporting the musical and theatrical arts at McNary High School. Thank you so very much for your continuing support of our students, and congratulations.
This time I'd like Kelly Carlisle to come forward. Kelly will make 2 award presentations this evening.
And just as quickly as Jim Taylor and John Honey sit down, I'm going to call them back up to the front, please. This spotlight is for Jim Taylor, teacher at McNary High School. At the 2013 Kaiser First Citizens and Awards Banquet held on January 25th, Kaiser Chamber President Derek Milton presented Jim Taylor with the President's Award. Chamber President Milton said that when it came down to considering who to pick, his final decision was based on 5 words: attitude, leadership, service, teamwork, and integrity. McNary Principal John Honey says that Jim is one of those rare teachers who will fight tooth and nail for his own program, his students, and for what he thinks best supports the arts. But at the same time, Jim sees the big picture, and his instructional mastery comes into play when he blends what is best for the choir with what is best for the students, the school, and the community. Every year, Jim tries to bring support for both the local Chamber of Commerce and the Kaiser Rotary by bringing his choir to each group's December meeting. Jim also realizes that the students need to be in class as semester finals are looming at that time of year, so his solution was to work with the Rotary and Chamber leadership and combine those 2 meetings into one big meeting. Jim uses this opportunity to show off the choir and highlight the academic achievements, the school involvement, and the community engagement of his students. Jim is the kind of teacher who gives back to the community and the school whenever possible. He works to ingrain community service principles in his students so that they understand and may achieve the true concept of service leadership. Kaiser President Milton states that Jim is very deserving of the award as he truly cares and is always willing to step up for the community, his school, and his students. Congratulations, Jim. And we're going to stay on a musical theme tonight, and I'm going to call up our principal of West Salem High School, Ed John. Ed was presented the Outstanding Administrator Award by the Oregon Music Education Association at their All-State Conference banquet held in Eugene on January 18. Ed was nominated by the music staff at West Salem High School. District Music Coordinator Mary Lou Boderman also contributed a letter of support for the nominations, stating that Ed is well deserving of this honor. Over the years, Ed has consistently demonstrated the value he places on music education. At West, he has hired and supported a strong staff, and together they have developed their program into one of the very best in the state. Todd Zimbelman, Director of Bands at West, says that Ed supports all of the school's activities, programs, and athletics. One of the most impressive things about his support is that Ed attends almost every single concert. The parents see this, and it makes a huge impact on them, the students, and the directors. He does everything he can to support these music programs, and if it's possible, Ed will make it happen. West Salem staff say that there is no way that they would be able to operate such successful programs without his continuing support. We thank you for the leadership and the positive impact you have made on your staff, your students, the community, and the district. Congratulations, Ed.
Okay, next on the agenda is audience communications related to agenda items only. When I call your name, please limit your comments to 3 minutes. We are using timers this evening. Paul DeCopoulos, our district counsel, is going to keep time. When the yellow light turns on up here, you'll have 30 seconds to finish speaking. When the red light turns on, your time is up. Please state your name and address. First up is Ginger Clark. Not yet. Go ahead, Ginger.
My name is Ginger Clark. I live at 2113 Tanager Avenue, Northwest Salem, and the topic for the record is the Salem-Keizer proposed middle school boundaries. Before I get started, I did want to let you know that the proposed boundary does not affect where my own children go to school. I'm here because of the negative impacts of allowing this proposal to be accepted goes beyond my personal family. Provided to each of you is a set of 3 exhibits. The first is the district's revised proposal of middle school boundaries. Circled in pink is Straub Middle School, and next to that circle is the HAR planning area. It is the treatment of this area that is the subject of my time before you. Please take a moment to look at that circled Straub Middle School in relation to the proposed boundary line in pink. The second exhibit in your packet is signatures from concerned people in the HAR neighborhood who are requesting you to vote no on Salem-Keizer's proposal. Regarding these signatures, I'd like to point out a few things. Each of these signatures represents someone respectfully requesting you to vote no on the boundary, urging you to ask the district to find a solution that allows kids who currently walk to school to continue doing so. There are many signatures on those sheets. There's 77. Had the weather permitted, there's no doubt that there have been well over 100. Less than 5 chose not to sign that form, and those were for reasons other than supporting the proposal. On this list, you will see households with and without kids. You will see households whose home falls in the Straub area and the Walker area. What they all have in common is the belief that this proposal hurts students, it hurts their chances at academic success, and it hurts their neighborhood. If you're asking, well, how does this hurt a student's chance at academic success? Let me explain by using information provided by SK educators, SK Salem-Keizer. Middle school and high school educators and administrators have urged parents to encourage their students' involvement in school activities, sports, after school, and have made a direct correlation between that involvement in their school and academic success. The students in that HAR area come from a variety of SES, socioeconomic status backgrounds, and in that neighborhood you will see them from modest homes, duplexes, mobile homes, apartments. By busing these students outside of their neighborhood, you eliminate their ability to stay after school for academic help, to participate in sports or other after-school functions, because their working parents cannot leave work to give them a ride home. These after-school opportunities are available to these kids if they are allowed to continue to walk to their school, if they are allowed to stay in their neighborhood school, which for that area is about a 10-minute walk to Straub. This brings me to the last exhibit. This exhibit uses data from the district's website. In it, you will see a quote from a document that states, balance in SES, socioeconomic standards, in our schools requires sending students to schools outside their neighborhood to create a mix of SES levels. However, when you look at the numerical data, you will see that neither of those objectives or principles are met. What you see is the district removing one of the highest FRL areas, free and reduced lunch areas, out of the middle school with the lowest free and reduced lunch percentages, and busing them possibly up to 2 hours a day to the middle school with already the highest free and reduced lunch percentage. This proposal does not meet the 2 principles. Instead, it sacrifices the neighborhood school. It creates a disadvantage for the students in that HAR bordering area and creates an even further disparity in the socioeconomic status of these two middle schools. During the walks around the neighborhood, I was often asked, why would the district do this? What's their, quote, real agenda? I could not answer those questions, but I ask you that if there is another objective that is at play in this boundary proposal, whether it be the dual language program or something else, that you ask the district to meet that objective in another way, in a way that doesn't negatively impact an entire neighborhood, that doesn't negatively impact students' chance of being able to participate in their school. In summary, I, along with those who provided their signature, respectfully request you vote no on the proposal and ask the district to allow these students who walk to their school, Straub Middle School, to continue doing so. Thank you.
Thanks, Ginger. Amy East.
Hi, my name is Amy East. My address is 2832 Eagle Eye Avenue Northwest, Salem 97304. I'm also here about the West Salem proposed middle school boundary changes. I first want to thank the district for their efforts in rewriting these boundaries. They are definitely needed. However, I'm very concerned about one aspect of the changes, specifically that Calapooya would be the only elementary school that splits students among the two middle schools when fifth graders go on to middle school. And therefore, it does not maintain continuity between elementary and middle school. The split is not consistent with the district's stated commitment to neighborhood schools and consistent elementary to middle school feeders. It is also not fair. Calapooya would be the only elementary school in West Salem that would split its fifth graders when entering middle school. Calapooya students are as deserving as all the other West Salem elementary school students of the same benefits. Under the first proposal, the district had proposed that Chapman Elementary students would split when going to middle school, and the district heard from Chapman parents who understandably were very upset about that, and the district responded by revising the proposal and to keep Chapman students, therefore honoring the parents' request. Calapooya families did not get that same chance to look at a proposed response. I understand that there may be families who currently have students going in middle school that are perhaps happy with the current proposal before you. However, most families who have yet to have their children enter middle school are very upset by the idea of splitting students going into middle school. This split would impact all students at Calapooya, regardless of which middle school they would attend. This problem has a feasible solution. If you vote no tonight, the district could easily assign students living in the Eola attendance area, there's about 112 under the district's numbers, reassign them to Straub rather than to Walker, thereby feeding all Calapooya students into one middle school. This option would best maintain continuity among the schools. Calapooya students currently already begin to utilize Straub services. For instance, my daughter takes orchestra as a fourth grader, goes up to Straub Monday, Wednesday, Friday. That's one example of how they can continue their services. I also really understand that the district's goal is to balance enrollment. Assigning the relatively small number of students in the Eola attendance area to Straub rather than to Walker, I think the district could maintain the balanced enrollment. That's a relatively small number of students. Moreover, those families who currently have students at a middle school, they could apply under the extended continuity clause, so they would maintain their interests, as well if you reassign the students in the Eola area to Straub. Those families right now, you could help those families too. At a minimum, I would ask that the district at least give Calapooya students the option to go to which middle school to choose for fairness. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is JP, is it Batmail or Batmate? Sorry about that. I'll let you state it then for the record.
I might not get it right, so that's. So my name's JP, Jean-Pierre Botmal. I live at 2520 Featherfire Avenue. That's Northwest and West Salem. And I'm speaking on the school attendance boundary for West Salem. I want to, first of all, thank the school board and the staff for taking not only the time, but also the extensive involvement they were able to get the public going on that. Was appreciated. I was one of the 300 parents that attended. I'm speaking in support of actually of what's been proposed, having attended 3 of the meetings. My kids are in elementary school. I feel what they've done in trying to rebalance the elementary schools is fair. There's a tough situation with a lot of the parents going into the middle schools, and but I did want to come out and what's been said thus far about the middle schools. I know it's difficult, and maybe there's a chance for a different way to approach the middle schools. But as far as the elementary schools go, I want to voice my support for the program. The other thing that I also want to express to the school board as a parent is that I think the continuity exemption was a very nice approach, and I'm very much in support of that. I know it's already in place, it seems like, but just don't take that away, I guess. That's what I'm saying to you. And the other thing is my children are involved in the dual language program, and it's very much something associated with the school where my children are at. We like the way that it's currently set up. We feel most of the parents do, and hope that it can stay at where it's at with Harriet, also with Myers, and then going into the middle schools. We're very, very much supportive of that program and keeping it where it's at. I would say on a very personal level, I commute to Portland every day. The dual language program is something that's keeping us in Salem, Kaiser School District. We think it's a great, valuable service. It's got great teachers, and it's a great way to build a community, not only of students, but also in that area around where my kids are going to elementary school. So, no, it's a difficult decision. There's clearly some other tough decisions to make when it comes to the middle schools, but as far as the elementary school boundaries, I wanted to speak in support of the proposal.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Dana Young.
My name is Dana Young, and I live at 4159 Geranium Loop Northeast in Salem, Oregon. And this is my exhibit. Hiding behind me, right here. Okay, Elijah is half Mexican, a quarter German, and a quarter Filipino. As we were looking for a kindergarten school, we weren't looking for a bilingual program. We were looking for an environment where my son was going to be able to go ahead and learn Spanish. Even though he's half Latino, he actually doesn't know Spanish. As we continue, diversifying the community, it is a lot harder for families like myself to go ahead and teach our kids Spanish. I thought it was going to be really easy. Well, it's not. He was accepted into a charter school. We had the private school option. We went and looked into other dual language programs. And even during our presentations, we heard talks about if I wanted my kid to speak Spanish, I would send him to Mexico. Or, you're Latino, how come you don't speak Spanish? So I wasn't looking for a program. I was really looking for a community, an environment where my son could go ahead and learn Spanish and not be left out, being a Latino, not knowing Spanish. Harriet definitely offers that. It offers the community, and most of the students there, I believe it's only 30% Latino. The rest of them are not non-Latino. You have Asians, African Americans, white, and it's so beautiful. As a Latino, I am a board member for the Latino Business Alliance, and I'm always asked, how do we reach the Latino market, right? How do we become more cultural, more diverse? And we have the tool right there at Harriet. You have 70% non-Latino families learning about the culture, learning Spanish. These are future bilingual doctors, attorneys, lawyers, chemists, bilingual teachers. What scares me about this proposal, with you voting yes to the boundaries, is the fact that where does that leave my son in that environment, that community? At the last meeting, it was said, well, parents don't really care where this program is offered, as long as it's offered. And I will object to that because parents like myself do care, because I'm talking about the social aspects, the environment, about my kid not being felt left out because he's a Latino that doesn't speak Spanish. Did we have other options for Elijah? We did. As we all know, there's other dual language programs in the Salem-Keizer district, but we knew that Harriet was going to provide him with that environment where he was not going to feel left out. He was going to feel welcome. And I feel very strongly about that. Obviously, as a young student, I was made fun of for not speaking English. My husband, he's actually Filipino, and people thought he was Mexican, and he's like, how come you don't speak Spanish? So we feel really strongly about that, so I would take that into consideration, that we really need to take into account that social aspects and the acceptance of these kids. There's going to be more kids like Elijah. You know, times have changed, and it is a lot harder for us to teach them Spanish, believe it or not. So I would highly recommend that you guys think about this aspect before moving forward and not live in a sort of limbo as to where is our dual language program going to be added. I wouldn't even call it a program. It's more of a community that is going to create our community more diverse. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Elijah. That's all we have signed up for audience communications on agenda items. Anyone else need to address the board on agenda items? Not seeing any. We'll move on to our action items. Up first is a resolution for Classified Employee Appreciation Week. I'm looking for a motion.
So moved.
Paul moves. Second by Nancy for a Classified Employee Appreciation Week resolution. I'll read that resolution now. Whereas the education of youth is essential to the future of our community, state, country, and world, and whereas classified employees are the backbone of our public education system, and whereas classified employees work directly with students, educators, parents, volunteers, business partners, and community members, and whereas classified employees support the smooth operation of offices, the safety and maintenance of buildings and property, and the safe transportation, healthy nutrition, and direct instruction of our students, and whereas our community depends upon and trusts classified employees to serve students, and whereas classified employees with their diverse talents and true dedication nurture students throughout their school years. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Salem-Keizer School District Board of Directors proclaims March 3rd through 7th, 2014 to be Classified Employee Appreciation Week. Be it further resolved that the Board of Directors strongly encourages all members of our community to join in this observance, recognizing the dedication and hard work of these individuals. Adopted this 11th day of February, 2014. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. It's unanimous. The resolution is adopted. And I want to thank our classified employees. If there are classified employees in the room, if you could please stand to be recognized. Thank you. Our next action item on the agenda is the school attendance area boundary changes in West Salem. I'll turn it over to Dr. Radich.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and board members. As the board is aware, we're bringing forward this evening the recommendation for an adjustment of the current school attendance area boundaries, and those are recommended for 5 elementary schools and 2 middle schools in West Salem. The proposed changes are intended to better balance the elementary school attendance catchment areas with school capacities and between the 2 elementary schools in order to allow similar staffing patterns. As the board is aware, staff have conducted community meetings relative to this issue, taken comments from parents, woven a number of those parent recommendations into the final recommendation to the board. The board listened to a workshop on this topic and has had a first reading of this item, and this evening we're bringing this item to you for your deliberation and action. In preparation for this evening, we also looked into some of the issues and questions that arose from the last discussion with the board. Specifically, the board had requested us to look at the dual language program and respond to questions surrounding that particular program. The other issue had to do with 5th graders who had siblings in middle school and whether or not, how many of those students were there, and would those students somehow also be given an exemption to continue attending the same middle school as their siblings. So at this time, I'd like Assistant Superintendent Salam Noor and Michael Wolf, our Chief Operations Officer who led this effort, to come forward and update the board on the work that they've done, and then to respond to any questions the board might have on this topic.
Good evening, Chair Green, Superintendent Radich, and board members. I'd like to start with the questions around the attendance of Harrit in the new boundaries with respect to the dual language program. And one of the things that was difficult in the conversations that we've had is that the numbers that you see up there are not enrollment numbers. They're numbers of students in a catchment area. And so what we were doing with rearranging and moving the boundaries was reestablishing the foundation for enrollment patterns for the future. And so one of the issues that we knew people had throughout the feedback was that if you add the number of IDTs to that number, it would clearly show that Harrit would be what we would consider overcapacity. Those aren't the numbers that you would add together to determine the capacity of Harrit. We actually have gone through throughout the process internally and taken a look at the actual enrollment projections that we have and made some planning assumptions to determine what the 14-15 enrollment at Harrit with the new boundaries, including the IDTs, would look like. And our numbers are around the 490 student population, which when you look at the BCP maximum number, again, that's a number for planning purposes where we already build into that number a fair amount of capacity in the facility. Like, for instance, we take a look at full-day kinder, assuming that we need to plan for that. And we also take a look at growth, whether it's programmatic or enrollment growth, and try to keep about 2 classrooms set aside as well. So when you take a look at the full capacity of Harrit, if we were running it with the current configuration of kindergarten right now, it would bump that number up to around 580. Now, there's a lot of numbers being thrown around, but the bottom line is to allay any concern that this boundary change would bring Harrit to an overcapacity situation. We just wanted to put that out there for the board and for the community to understand that we've taken the projected enrollment and looked at 14-15, and we don't believe that there's a risk of that happening. So we wanted to lead with that. And I'll let Dr. Noor talk about the programmatic elements of the dual language program as well.
Thank you, Mike. Just very briefly, to reiterate what we said last time, is that students that are currently on an IDT, we will honor that. They will continue to go to Harrit should they choose to. And we have no plans to move the elementary dual language program out of Harrit this year. The only concern that I will share with the board is one related to staffing. So I think I would not advise making that decision here, of course, because there is a set of data that we have to look at in terms of enrollment in the program, our staffing capacity for that program, the size of classrooms that would be in that program. But just to restate what we've said publicly, the program will be dual language program will be at Harrit next year. If you're on an IDT, we will honor that, whether it is for dual language or not. That fell under the continuity exemption. And that staffing and that the district staff will go through a process to determine the scope of the program, if you will, the number of students that can be accommodated. At the middle school level, we will have conversations as to whether the program continues to be at Straub or consider moving that program to Walker. That is a conversation that we did have with the community a year ago, and the community is fully aware of the process associated with that. So we do have some programmatic decisions to make as a district, but we need to have some data that informs our thinking and our decision making. So.
Any questions, board? Chris?
There seem to be, excuse me, 2 of them that have popped up since the revised presentation that you guys did at West. And they seem to be, one of them, the way I would encapsulate it is that we used to have 3 elementary schools that were being split. And then the revised plan, there's now 1. That has made some parents feel like now their kids are even more being subjected to a problem, because it used to be that kids from all over town were being mixed up and sent into different middle schools. Now it's just one group of them, and therefore that's sort of landing harder on that group. I responded via email to a couple parents about that concern, basically saying that the way I understand it, we can't figure out a way to put 5 elementary schools into 2 middle schools without splitting at least one of them. And that what you did when you did your revised program was to basically say, we're trying to get the number of kids affected down, therefore we're going to bring this down to 1 elementary school. Have I got it right? Is that, that's sort of what my confusion is at this point, is that there's still concern over that, and yet I don't see any way around it. I'm just interested in you talking a little bit about how you came to the place you are.
Right. I think you captured it really well, Chris, and what really drove our decision is the fact that the students that are in the area that will attend Walker currently under the existing boundaries would have gone to Walker. So that was the best way to approach this challenge. And you're absolutely right. We had 3 elementary schools that split into 2 middle schools, and now we only have 1, but they would have split anyway under the current boundary. So we tried to be sensitive to that. We recognize that this is extremely challenging. It's difficult on families. It's difficult on kids. And we want to minimize that impact. And I believe we've taken everything we possibly can into consideration to reduce that impact. Our initial proposal impacted 34% of the students. Based on parent feedback and input, this proposal impacts 24% of the students.
And I assume you've tried to take the 3 smallest elementary schools and feed 1 middle school with them, and the 2 biggest ones and feed the other elementary school with them, and it doesn't balance.
Yeah.
I'm just assuming that.
Yeah, we looked at a lot of different scenarios. I believe we shared with the community that we had literally 13, 14 different scenarios before we came back to this one. So we wanted to find the one that has the least impact on the community and provided that continuity for students.
But ultimately is going to have an impact on some folks.
Yes.
Nancy?
I'm just really confused looking at the West Salem Middle School proposed boundary page, because I see Chapman Hill plots in the Straub side, and I see a Chapman Hill plot in the Walker side, and I see Calapooya in the Straub side and Calapooya in the Walker side. So that seems to me there are 2 grade schools that would be splitting, not 1. And so it's that plot 32?
Yeah.
CHH-C?
Right, right, and I can speak to that, Nancy. The nomenclature shows that it's currently a Chapman Hill attendance area, but the color coding, and I don't know if you're looking at a black and white or a colored copy, okay. The color coding should show that it's moving into Harret's new boundary.
I see. Okay, I get it.
So the question that I asked with regard to those 5th graders whose middle school siblings are going to be attending a different middle school, what are we going to do for those kids?
You want me to get, yeah, go ahead.
We have 16 students that are impacted under that category.
Okay.
And we would be more than happy to give you a recommendation right now if you would like. But we'd also welcome hearing what you would like us to do.
Well, I brought this up because I'm a parent of a middle schooler, and I know how difficult it could be for a parent to have to drop one student at Straub and then turn around and drop their other student at Walker.
Right.
So I guess what I'd like to see is the ability for that student, that 5th grader, to be able to attend the middle school where his or her sibling attends. Is that the recommendation you're making, that we do an IDT for those kids?
Right. Under the normal IDT process, those students would be accommodated simply because of what you just described. However, we can include it under the continuity exemption this time, so it's officially part of the board's decision.
Okay. That's what I would like. I don't know what the rest of my board members would like, but I know that that can be somewhat of a pain for middle school parents, have to drop at one and then turn around and drop their other student at another. Now, maybe the kids don't get along and they don't want to go to the same school, but I think that should be a family issue that's discussed. But I'd like to be able to have that opportunity for those families so that their kids can attend the same middle school.
Right. Because it's too late for us to bring you a written recommendation for you to act on, I would suggest that this perhaps be an amendment to the staff recommendation that the board acts on tonight.
Okay, thanks. Paul?
I have do you have the board plate in front of you? If you don't, I have about 4 copies up here.
Okay.
They're all pretty much the same. I thought they would be different.
Paul, did you give them the one that's titled Action 3B Revised, February 11th, 2014?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so we're all working
I
on the
even
same
have a
one.
highlighted sentence on the one I gave them, and I'm concerned about how wedded you are to that sentence, since that seems to be part of the problem, is that sentence describes a neighborhood school rather and eliminates the dual language program at Herritt. Is that sentence
Yeah.
required? Can you live without it, or must you have it?
Right. I would say that sentence is really essential to this whole process because that's what created the imbalance in enrollment and the need to revise the boundaries in West Salem. So Herritt currently is a dual language school, and only students that participate in the dual language program attend Herritt. Once it reverts back to a neighborhood school, it will have the ability to accommodate both students in the dual language program and students that want to be instructed in English only. So it doesn't really impact the program. What it does, it changes the neighborhood, it changes the school designation to a neighborhood school, which allows it to absorb more students, hence allowing us to balance the enrollment in West Salem amongst the elementary schools.
And I
So
would-
it's necessary, I would say.
I would just reiterate what Salam said. It actually was one of the central driving principles of the boundary change, not to eliminate the dual language program, but to expand Herritt to a neighborhood school with a dual language program.
Okay, because I understood from our last discussion that you were going to add something in there about the dual language program continuing, which in the revised versions, I still don't see. That's why I'm asking why that sentence is left.
And I
it's
appreciate.
not been altered.
Right, and I appreciate the clarification. This sentence is really representative of what took place in West Salem and one of the drivers for the boundary change. This is a boundary change process and not a program change process, and I would not advise the board to make any decisions relative to programs at this time. You don't have all the data you need to make programmatic-based decisions. We don't have the data that we need to make those programmatic-based decisions. So I would recommend that we stay within a boundary change process, decision-making framework, and then if you'd like some information relative to the program, we would be happy to come back and share that with you with some recommendations. But I would advise the board to not get into program decisions today, if I may.
Paul, did you have a follow-up? Chuck?
I've heard from some families that bought a home specifically within an elementary school area because that's the school they wanted their kids to go to. And now it's changed, and their kids are going to be going to a different one. I guess my question is how confident do you feel that by going through this process right now that we won't be doing it again in another 2 or 3 years?
It certainly is not our desire by any
yeah.
stretch of the imagination. That's why, again, I would go back to recasting the foundation, the drive enrollments in West Salem, which was the effort here, so that we can be better positioned for the future growth that we know will be coming. And we believe this is our best thinking with the help of the community to put forward and in front of you for action. Now, having said that, there are no guarantees. We could have a housing boom that none of us expects in the next 2 to 3 years, but that's probably unlikely to happen.
And the only thing that I would add is, under the continuity exemption, we're not going to see immediate relief because some parents will take advantage of that for many years. So it's going to take some time for this to level out. And we just think it's really important for the board and the community to understand that.
Do you feel like maybe some of these factors weren't taken into consideration 2 years ago when we went through this process, and as a result of that, we've learned this time and we'll be better off?
I believe we had a really good process. It was very inclusive. The drivers were clearly articulated from the beginning relative to balancing enrollments, resetting the foundation to accommodate growth, and it was very inclusive in terms of the schools and the parents that participated. So I'm really confident that we've led and facilitated a good process. I also recognize that it's not a perfect process and not everyone is going to be satisfied. It's dramatically different from the first time we did this, and I believe this is a better process, more balanced and more comprehensive and better for the long term.
I'd just like to add, I also heard from an awful lot of people who really did appreciate the openness that you had at these meetings, and your responsiveness to the community suggestions was well received.
Thank you.
So, Salam, I just had a question. You stated at the beginning of your presentation that for this school year, or did you include next school year?
Next
that-
year.
that
I
the-
meant next year, yeah, for
that-
this coming school year. Yeah.
So the dual language program would remain at Harriet
Right.
through the 2014, 2015 school year?
That is correct. That is correct. And Myers. Yeah. Yeah.
Chris?
The other question that came up tonight that I hadn't actually heard before was the issue with the boundary, the middle school boundary, that comes within 2 blocks of Straub Middle School where the kids that live there would go off. And it does, on its appearance, I can see why they got as many signatures as they did in that neighborhood, asking the question why. So I think it's only appropriate to ask you in public to sort of explain why that ends up the way it does.
So just to clarify the question, Chris, is it relative to where the boundary is established for Harriet, or why does it feed into Walker?
The question, as I understood it from the testimony and from the document that we got with all the signatures on it, was that we have a boundary for the middle school that goes within a couple blocks of Straub Middle School, and students that live easily walking distance from Straub are going to end up being bused down to Walker. And the question, as I understand it, is why did that ended up happening the way it did? Why didn't we end up with a boundary that was a little further away from Straub, so walkers
Yep.
weren't able to get
I
there?
appreciate the clarification. I think this is one of the tough decisions that we had to make as a staff. In the previous boundary setting process, the community just drew a line across, kind of, was it an east-west geographical boundary? We wanted to establish a neighborhood boundary and a feeder catchment system. So we had to make a decision as to which schools would feed into what middle schools. And I want to emphasize that this is a very small community. These kids see each other on a regular basis. They would have all attended the same school if we had not opened another school in West Salem. They participate in sports together, community events together, music programs together, and they will all end up at West Salem High School in 3 years. So I appreciate the concerns about that, but we had to make some pragmatic, quite frankly, and just technical decisions relative to where we place those catchment areas, and this is the best recommendation we can offer.
As I said when I posed the question, I
Yep.
hadn't heard this one before. This is new to this evening, but
Right.
I just want to, my comment would be that having been to a couple of those meetings and having listened to the community interact around these various proposals that you've made, I agree with what Chuck said, is that the preponderance of the responses that I have gotten have been positive about the process, they've been positive about the result, and that I think we're obviously affecting far fewer students than we did with the first proposal that you came up with, and I think that's very positive. I can understand why those parents feel like now their kids are sort of this unique little group, but the alternative is that more parents feel that way. And so, at this point, I'm ready to support the proposal that you have in front of us for those reasons.
Nancy?
I just wondered if you could address the free and reduced lunch issue. I understood when you presented initially that there was attention to creating balance, and we've received letters, and there was testimony tonight that indicated something different. Could you address that?
Sure. And is that relative to the middle school conversation?
I think we got letters about the grade schools as well.
Okay, okay. All right. And so it's one of many factors that we take a look at. We also understand that, relative to the rest of the district, when we're looking at high free and reduced percentages, we're looking at close to 70% being heading towards title funding. And so none of those conditions exist in West Salem. In fact, the current existing SES, highest SES, is 42%, and that's at Brush College. And in our proposal, the revised proposal, this is at the elementary level, we were able to shift the percentage to be more balanced across all schools, although the highest SES percentage is right around 42-43% projected, and it's at Harrit. But again, as Salam said, because of the continuity exemptions and the extension to the normal exemption, we can talk about those numbers as if they're going to happen in 14-15, but the fact of the matter is this is a 3+ year transition, could be 4-year transition. A lot can happen between now and then, but we didn't, in this proposal, we didn't significantly increase the highest SES percentage in West Salem. We balanced, more of the elementary schools are balanced now, and we still have one that is higher than the other 4 on the elementary level. And on the middle level, again, it's the pieces, when you move the elementaries around on the boundaries, and then you roll that up to the middle school, we have an SES disparity, but right now, the existing difference between the 2 middle schools is about 10%, and we will increase that to 15% between the 2 schools, but we're still well below the 70% threshold in West Salem.
So, let me make sure I've got this straight in my head. The continuity exemptions that we're talking about effective in West Salem would be, it's part of the inter-district transfer process, but they're automatically granted. So if a student as of, I think it's January 15th, 2014, is that correct? Is that the date we're looking at? January 14th. If they were in an elementary school and they're due to shift their boundary, if they would apply for an inter-district transfer under the continuity exemption, they would be granted that automatically to finish out their elementary career.
That is correct.
And then the same would be said for middle school students if they were in 6th or 7th grade as of January 15th. If they were due to change, they could fill out an inter-district transfer agreement, be granted automatic continuity exemption to maintain either a Walker or Straub wherever they were enrolled previously.
That is correct.
And the only other issue that we haven't dealt with is the middle school issue I was talking about with the siblings, the 16 kids. But then you also had incoming 2014-15 school year for kindergarten kids of siblings who are enrolled in another school. So you've taken care of that issue, but it does require an inter-district transfer form to be filled out, but under the continuity exemption, it's automatically granted. So if there were a student who didn't fall into one of those categories that we've talked about, and the one that I'm going to propose we amend in, which are those 16 kids, if you have a kid who's currently going to, would be projected to go to Straub, that lived in that Harriet attendance area, that would go to Walker under this plan, they could apply for an inter-district transfer to attend Straub. It's not automatic, and both principals of the affected middle schools have to agree to that. Is that the process we use?
And just one other point of clarification, assuming they have a sibling that attends Straub. It's the sibling connection.
Right. I'm talking about a
General,
student who
yeah.
may not have a sibling in this instance, Mike, where you've got a parent in the Harriet catchment area who says, well, I can see Straub right there.
Yeah.
I'd like to apply for an inter-district transfer to allow my student to finish out or go to Straub, attend Straub. So they're a current 3rd grader. 3 years down the road, they want to go to Straub. They could still apply for our inter-district transfer process. And the way I understand it is the 2 affected principals approve that or don't approve it. Is that correct?
That is correct. The process does have some stipulations that they have to follow.
Sure.
And much of it depends on space. Sometimes it's a one-to-one transfer, but the principals do actually engage in the process, and then the level director is also involved.
And then at none of these, whether it's a continuity exemption or it's an inter-district transfer, do we provide transportation under our current rules? Is
That is correct. They are responsible for their own transportation.
Jim?
Yes, Nancy. Thank you.
I just wanted to clarify another thing I heard tonight that is different than I understood. Do we no longer run late buses at middle schools to allow kids to participate in after-school activities and then have a 4 o'clock bus or something? Are those gone? They're gone?
Okay.
I don't think they're gone. I think if it's a school-sanctioned activity, for example, middle school football is a program that we offer as as a middle school program. Students do travel from Walker to play at Straub, they play at Stevens and Leslie, so we do transport them, yes. I don't think they're completely gone.
That's not what I was asking. We used to have buses that ran late.
Activity buses.
Activity buses
Activity
that
buses.
allowed students to stay after school, participate in activities, and then get bused
Back home.
back home. But I imagine in '09, when we slashed all kinds of things, that we lost those buses as well.
Okay.
Yeah, we can look into that
Yeah.
and get you that information, but I believe the type of busing that you're describing is no longer available. But sports and events that are sanctioned by the level in the program, those
Right.
are supported, yes. May I-
So do we have a motion, board?
I'll make the motion.
And I'd like to amend that motion if it's allowable to you to allow those elementary students who currently have a sibling in a middle school to attend the middle school of their sibling under the continuity exemption. Is that the 16 kids we were talking about? Is that,
That's acceptable, yep.
is there a second?
Second.
Second by Jeff. Further discussion? You know, I'd like to say to the staff, thanks for all your hard work on this. These are never easy decisions, and they're not your decisions. They happen to be our decisions, and we get the big bucks for making those decisions, as you're all well aware of. And I really appreciate the time and energy that you took to go out and meet with the public in West Salem. And the first crack at it, you heard from the public that that wasn't a very good opportunity for them. You came back, you revised it. We are never, ever, ever going to make everybody happy in a boundary change. These are one of the toughest decisions that a school board can make as affecting families, students. I appreciate the work that Mike Salam and your team did in this. I know you looked at transportation routes, you looked at a variety of things, and I appreciate the time and effort that you put into it. I think you did really good work. Unfortunately, some folks are going to be upset, and we will try to work as best as we can with those families because we want to make sure that their educational experience for their boys and girls in the school district are exemplary, and I think we will try to continue that. So thanks for your hard work.
Thank you.
Okay, any further discussion about that? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Paul? Paul's opposed. Motion carries. Next is the adoption of the consent calendar. All items will be adopted by single motion unless we need to pull one. Anybody need to pull one?
So moved.
Second?
Second by Nancy. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. We're on to readings. We have our first reading, request from the City of Salem regarding approval of the multi-unit housing tax incentive program. I think we're turning this over to our Chief Operating Officer.
Yes, I'd like to make a couple introductory comments. Michael Wolf and I were invited by the City of Salem to attend a session relative to a new development that's proposed for the west side area, the east side area. The city has subsequently requested that the school district consider a property tax exemption for 10 years for this Pringle Square development. And Michael has done some work on this with the city and consulted with them and is prepared to make that presentation this evening.
Okay. Chair Green, Superintendent Radich, members of the board, thank you. I want to start with a little background and discussion, and but before I do that, I'd like to make sure that everyone knows that we have City of Salem staff here available if in fact there are specific questions around this, and if there are, then I'll introduce them and have them move forward. Back in June 1976, the Salem City Council enacted the multiple unit housing tax incentive program. And this is a program that is authorized by Oregon Revised Statutes, which allow local governments to establish a program of property tax exemptions to stimulate the construction of transit-supportive multiple-unit housing in the core areas of Oregon's urban centers. The program provides a property tax exemption for up to 10 years. On January 27th, 2014, Council unanimously approved 2 applications from Pringle Square South LLC for participation in the program for a land development project located on the former Boise Cascade site. The project includes 175 rental units to be phased in over a 3-year period. Phase 1 will include 115 apartment units, Phase 2 an additional 60. The estimated number of school-aged children that will be generated by this project is approximately 42. They would be attending the Bush, Leslie, and South schools, and we don't anticipate a boundary change necessary for this project. Pursuant to the ORS 307, in order for a project to be exempt from property taxes from other taxing jurisdictions such as counties or the school district, the governing bodies of the taxing districts representing 51% or more of the total combined rate of taxation levied on the property under consideration must agree by resolution to the exemption. The City of Salem and the school district collectively represent approximately 52% of the total property tax levy, 29% for the city, 23% for the district. The city estimates that the total tax abatement for all districts in the first full year of assessment is approximately $205,157 for Phase 1, $95,952 for Phase 2. The property is within the South Waterfront Urban Renewal Area, so there will be no change to the district's tax revenue as it's currently frozen because of the urban renewal area. And then what follows is the draft resolution that's part of the first reading. There's no action to be taken tonight. And it's broken into 4 sections. The first section establishes the city's authority to approve a tax exemption through its multiple unit housing tax incentive program, and requires that the city seek agreement by resolution of the governing bodies of the taxing jurisdictions representing 51% or more of the total combined rate of taxation levied on the property under consideration. Section 2, the City Council has by resolution approved 2 applications for the tax exemption under the program. Section 3, the city has officially requested that the Salem-Keizer Board of Education agree by resolution with the policies established in the city's program. And Section 4 would be your statement that you do in fact agree with the policies established in the city's program, and therefore would authorize an exemption from property taxes of all applicable taxing districts consistent with this decision. Any questions at this point?
So, Mike, I have a question real quick. On that last one, you said where the city has formally requested that the school district agree by resolution the policy providing tax exemptions for this one, and then you said all. Are we only approving this exemption, or are we approving any ones that would come forward from the city into the future?
No,
it's just this one 10-year property tax
Well,
exemption.
there's two
phases.
applications for this. When I say all, that means it affects all taxing jurisdictions. There are more than just the city and the district. So by agreeing through resolution, we would be affecting the rest of the taxing jurisdictions as well.
And each one of the 2 applications have requested the 10-year exemption?
Yes.
Okay. Chris?
I have a couple questions. The first is, the last sentence of that 3rd paragraph, the project is within the South Waterfront Urban Renewal Area, so there's no change to the district's tax revenue. There is a sunset, I believe, on those urban renewal areas, and I'm just wondering if we know what that is and how that coincides with this 10-year abatement, because there could be a loss in revenue out there in the future if the urban renewal district goes away before these exemptions go away.
You know, that's a great question, and this would probably be a good transition for me to introduce John Wales, who's the director of the city's urban development department, and Doug Rocks is the assistant director. And perhaps they could come up and answer those questions specifically.
Thank you. Good evening, Commissioner Green, or Chairperson Green, and members of the board. I'm John Wales, the Director of the Urban Development Department for the City of Salem. As I understand the question, it has to refer to the length of time urban renewal areas are allowed to stay open. There are not sunset periods. There's not a time limit on an urban renewal district by state law. What controls the timing is the maximum indebtedness that an urban renewal is allowed to have. And in the South Waterfront urban renewal area, that maximum indebtedness is $26 million. That means that's the amount of money that the city can borrow in order to do projects and invest in the district. At this time, the city has incurred no borrowing, and so there is not a short window in when this will occur. We have not started really to develop the projects projected for the
So
South Water.
it's pretty clear at this point that there will not be a closure of the urban renewal area before the end of this 10-year.
That's the assumption. It will be open much longer than this. But unless the council chooses to act differently.
I'm asking that question because we have some history in this area and with the Kaiser Station situation out in Kaiser. And one of what we did with those folks, and they were very helpful with us, is that our revenue, you work for the city, you understand,
Sure.
our revenue these days is really pretty poor, and it's as bad as it's been in a long time. And what Kaiser did with us is figured out a way to make up the difference for the school district when we approved the loss of revenue, so that they're in essence making up the difference for us. And I would like to see, if we were going to do something like this, the same provision, if there is any loss of revenue to the school district out there 7-8 years from now, that in fact the city is ready to backfill that for us so that we're not suffering that loss.
You know, Chris, I think this may be a little bit different than the Kaiser Station one,
very-
because that
it's
was
very
an
different.
extension, if I remember correctly. That was an extension of the urban renewal district that was out there. And there's a state statute, and Paul, you can correct me on this because you negotiated this with the city of Kaiser. When they were going to extend, there was a new state law that required the taxing districts to approve the extension of that urban renewal if you were at such percentage, I can't remember. And they were asking to extend that urban renewal. They had to come before us to ask for that extension. And in our approval process, we negotiated that payment of any loss from them. So it was an extension of an already established urban renewal. What you're hearing, I think, from John tonight is this is not an extension.
No.
This is a continuing urban renewal that
That
they
is
haven't
correct.
reached their borrowing limitation on.
Right, and it's just actually started. It's at the beginning of the urban renewal. So it's the newest, most recent one that was created in the city.
But what I thought I heard you say is that things could change.
Well, there's always a where if the city council were to decide to not continue the urban renewal area, it could in essence, make that decision. It would have to pay back any incurring debt that had already occurred, and it's not, I can't speak for the council at this point. I don't know
And I
going
don't
forward whether
expect
they
you
would
to.
do that, yeah.
So the only reason I brought this up is because if we could, this is just one board member, but if we could figure out a way that if any untoward thing, unexpected, it sounds like, were to happen, and there was a loss of revenue to the school district through this process, that there would be something written into our agreement that allowed us to come back and look at how that can be backfilled. What I'm hearing is it's not likely to
It's
happen.
not like that.
But if it did, it would be nice to have something in the agreement.
Okay. Rick, and then Paul.
Although there may be differences between this situation and the last one. What's similar to me is it's a tax exemption, and so we're going to be foregoing income, even though we're made whole by the state. We're foregoing income that the state taxpayers have to backfill if this is approved. Just as the same situation in the Kaiser situation. So even though our share of that income the first year might be $60,000, whatever 23% of 300,000 is, it's money we're foregoing, and the state has to backfill because it's not local tax that the state doesn't have to worry about backfilling at that point. So I'd like to know what what we think the total will be over 10 years that we're asking the state of Oregon taxpayers to backfill by approving this. If there's any way to estimate a total.
This is Doug Rux, the Assistant Director.
Doug Ruggs, Assistant Director for Urban Development Department, City of Salem. I think probably a good place to start and think about this is that in 2007, the city went through a process and created an urban renewal district in the South Waterfront area. And they went through the confer consult process with all of the overlapping taxing districts in order to create that particular plan. So there's a frozen base that was established at that time, and it's a little over $23 million. And all of the taxing districts are sharing in that $23 million based upon your rate. So there's a percentage that goes with that. So as the value increases above that frozen base, that is the money or the funds that the Urban Renewal Agency collects in order to be able to do projects that are outlined within the plan. And generally, you know, it takes 20 years or so for plans to kind of get to that point where they get up towards their maximum indebtedness. It's all driven by the level of development and the increased value of the property that's in that area. In this situation, is that with the mixed, multiple-use housing tax program, is it's for 10 years. So in this case, the Salem-Keizer School District and the other districts are already foregoing tax revenues. Those revenues are going to the Urban Renewal District. And so in this situation, it's the Urban Renewal District is the one who's not going to be receiving funds to be able to bond against. And that is a decision that the City Council in their resolution made. So when you get to the issue about the property taxes and the backfilling, is if you had additional property taxes coming into the school district funds itself, that would also mean that you would have a reduction in the amount of funds that are coming from the state, because it's part of that equalization. And this gets to be an extremely complicated conversation to have. But if you back that up and say, Salem-Keizer School District currently is not collecting those taxes based upon decisions that have already been made. For 10 more years, you're still not going to get those particular funds. At the end of that 10-year period, if the Urban Renewal District is still in place, which is anticipated it would be given the kind of revenue that's generating now, is it would continue on and you would not be collecting those additional property taxes that in year 11 or 12 at that point in time. Where you do get that value is at the end of that Urban Renewal District when it comes back onto the tax rolls. And in Urban Renewal under ORS 457 is you have that increased value that has occurred, and all of the taxing districts then share in that benefit in the wealth from that new development and those improvements and that assessed value that has come with that over time.
Nicely done.
Paul.
Nicely done.
Why don't we let Rick done?
Rick?
I didn't get my answer, but it's fine.
Yeah. Mike, how did you estimate 41 new students is my first question.
That's part of our process around enrollment projections, and we use the Council of Government data, and it's done internally at facility staff.
And then have other taxing districts, groups been contacted, or only Salem-Keizer School District in the city? Have we heard from any of the other groups that would be impacted by this?
We have heard from a few of them, and
they've
that,
said?
well, we haven't approached them in this manner to ask for their participation in this process. In the past, we've had, over the 30 years that this program has been in place, we've used it 3 times, and Salem-Keizer has been the partner in approving this. Now, I know that we have had, when we made our announcement about this project, we received comments of support from a transit district, for example. We haven't made a formal recommendation or request of them at this time.
So I think the only other taxing districts that I think would be impacted by this may be Chemeketa, Willamette ESD, and the Transit District? And the county, sorry, Marion County.
Marion County and the Library District.
Oh, the Library District, too. I forgot about the Library District.
Fire District?
No, because Marion County Fire District doesn't cover this area. Any further questions? Mr. Brantley?
The question that just is swimming around in my mind, I think it's more for Paul than anybody else, is why are we being asked? Because what I'm hearing is that we're not losing anything we haven't already lost. Why does it take our approval of this to have this happen?
Well, it takes 51% of the taxing districts, and if we're, what, 25% or?
23.
23%, and the city is
29.
Then there's the math.
So
could they do it another way? Probably, or maybe not. I mean, if there's, I don't know the particular small pieces of these other taxing districts. If you can do it another way. I mean, we've partnered with the city in this way before. I mean, this was the same thing that the city of Keizer did several years ago when they wanted the extension. They came to this board first. I think that Marion County was going to be their next stop.
But specifically, this one came from the city council in this fashion to the school district, is my understanding.
Well, and I guess what I'm really asking is that, what I'm hearing is that whether we approve it or don't approve it, nothing changes.
Except for, Chris, I think that,
Help me.
I'm not an attorney.
Yeah. Help me.
Nor do I play one on TV, but the statute requires that they have approval by 51%. And that's why this is complying with the statute.
So I'm expecting the law to actually make sense, is what the
That's what
problem
you're
is.
expecting,
Okay, all right.
I believe.
got you.
So this is only for first reading tonight. This is our first information on it. I'm sure if board members have questions, Jeff, go ahead.
I think the question that he's getting down to is what happens if they don't get 51%?
Yeah, basically, I guess that's the ultimate question is, if you don't get the approval of the taxing districts, what changes?
For the school district, nothing. Taxes are above the frozen base are still being redirected per those past approvals into the urban renewal district program. If 51% cannot be achieved, it would mean that the only tax exemption that they would be getting is on the city's portion. So the urban renewal agency would still be getting some funds instead of getting 0 funds over the 10 years for this particular project. And so the city council had made that determination. So roughly 29% of those urban renewal funds that are coming in the district overall would be exempt from it, but then the other taxing districts would continue. They wouldn't get 100% exemption.
Correct. Right.
Bottom line.
Yeah.
So,
Rick?
would make a difference.
Thank you, Doug. You just made it a lot clearer by saying the tax is still there, it's just gonna go to a different pocket. I hadn't heard that yet. That
Goes to the
the
urban
project
renewal
would be taxed, but we would not get the money.
Or the urban renewal.
The urban renewal district would.
Yes, the urban renewal district in this situation is the one that would not be receiving tax receipts for this tax exemption.
No, but if we go to Chris's example, if we say no and the project doesn't, or the exemption doesn't go forward, from our perspective, our amount of the money would go to the urban renewal district.
Correct.
The
Continues to
city's
go.
amount of money would not. It would stay with the development.
Yeah, and then again, this all has to be finalized by the county assessor, has to go through that mathematical formula to do that distribution in the final amounts.
So again, this is just up for first reading. We're not making a decision tonight. We'll bring this back to the March 10th meeting for decision. If you have questions, in the meantime, Mike, you want him to contact you?
Oh, please.
Please contact Mike Wolf, and if he has questions, he can forward them on to Linda, the city manager, and our urban renewal folks at the city as well. Thank you for being here tonight and answering our questions. Anything else on this one? All right, thanks, Mike. We're moving on to reports. We'll talk about our monitoring report tonight, financial administration. Dr. Radich.
Thank you. Executive limitation number 8, monitoring report, is designed to provide the board with information to determine if the superintendent meets the criteria established within this limitation of financial administration. So executive limitation number 8 discusses basically 3 indicators of the district's financial health. One is material deviations from the annual budget or budget policy adopted by the board. The second would be any fiscal condition that is inconsistent with achieving the board results. Or third, any fiscal condition that places the long-term fiscal stability of the district at risk. So there are 11 areas of compliance under executive limitation number 8, and I'm only going to address 4 of those, numbers 1, 2, 6, and 7, just very briefly, and then we'll respond to any questions the board might have. So under number 1, the superintendent shall not expend more funds than have been budgeted in the fiscal year unless authorized by the board. As the board is aware, our comprehensive annual financial report for 2012-13 concluded that there were no over expenditures occurring in any funds, and then we are also closely monitoring the current year's budget. We do report 1 incident of non-compliance for this executive limitation. Earlier this year, as the board is aware, staff noted that a grant award was not processed in a timely manner by including the grant award in the board's consent agenda prior to making the expenditures. And the issue was addressed immediately. Staff members have also been trained to properly process these grants. Under number 2, the superintendent shall expend funds in a manner that does not materially change the intent of the adopted budget unless authorized by the board. Expenditures in 2013-14 budget have not been materially changed and are in alignment with the intent established by the board. A transfer that would change the original appropriations of the adopted budget must have board approval, and to date, we have made no such requests. Under number 6, the superintendent shall provide quarterly budget reports that include a recap of the current and previous year's budget and changes to revenue and enrollment. As the board is aware, the district provides quarterly financial reports to the board throughout the year, and these reports are posted on the district's website and include changes in enrollment and the outlook for the school year. Number 7, the superintendent shall notify the board by May of each year if the revenue projections indicate the ending fund balance might fall outside the parameters established by the school board. The projected ending fund balance for 2012-13 was within parameters established by the school board of 3% for the lower limit. For the current fiscal year, projections remain within limits established by the board, that is, an ending fund balance of 3% of total resources as a lower limit only. And the board is kept informed of the projected ending fund balance as part of our quarterly financial reports. So I'd be happy to respond to any questions board members may have on this executive limitation.
Paul?
My only comment is not all the board members are aware of the quarterly reports. I've never, to my knowledge, been offered one or seen one. And I've only been on the board, though, 2 quarters.
I will be certain that you receive all of those
I
quarterly
appreciate
reports.
that. Thank you.
Any other? So normally, board, we don't vote on these, we just look for a, oh, Rick, sorry.
The quarterly reports do come out by email, and I know I've gotten one since you got, so it may have been something you didn't recognize, but.
No, there was a problem with getting emails.
Okay,
from
all right. I did have, on number 7, I did have a question of the interim superintendent. You mentioned on the 3% as a lower limit only.
Correct.
Actually, that was we do still have an upper limit. We lowered the lower limit from 5 to 3.
That's correct.
But the upper limit of 7% or 8, whichever one it is still in
Yes.
place.
That is still in place.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions? As you know, board, we don't take a vote on this. We look for consensus by thumbs up, looking up and down. We're okay. All right, moving on. We're going to talk about the strategic plan and Superintendent Radich.
Yes, Ken Parshall, our Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources, has a presentation.
Good evening, Dr. Radich, Chairperson Green, and members of the board. It's my pleasure to update you on progress on strategic plan number 4, which is to continue to build the resident teacher training program and learning labs in collaboration with our university partners at selected schools. We have 3 university partners, Willamette University, Corbin University, and Western Oregon University, excuse me. Together we form the Salem-Keizer University Collaborative. This is Willamette University's last year in the collaborative as they have chosen to discontinue their teacher preparation program. We will continue the model next year with Corbin and Western University, excuse me, Western Oregon. This work of the collaborative is supported through a Teach Oregon grant, which comes to us through Chalkboard. There are 4 components which are supported through the grant. 1 is clinical practice, 2 is selection and recruitment, 3 is hiring and placement, and 4 is mentoring and induction. Strategic plan number 4, of course, falls under clinical practice or preparation of a pre-service teacher. I'd like to describe the clinical or resident teacher model to you and compare it to a medical model. So just as a doctor might have multiple interns with them, in the clinical or residential teacher model, a trained clinical teacher or resident teacher would have multiple student teachers or the new term teacher candidates placed with them in a pre-service experience. The purpose for the model is to scaffold the experience for a teacher candidate to ensure that they're prepared when they take over the complexity of running a full classroom. So it might look like a model teacher leading a lesson, but then breaking the classroom into 3 sets and 3 adults actually leading learning in 1 classroom. A progress report, 1.5 years in, we've established the resident or clinical model in 7 Salem-Keizer schools. They are Battle Creek Elementary, Chavez Elementary, Hoover Elementary, Yoshikai Elementary, Stevens and Waldo Middle Schools, and McKay High School. We've now trained more than 60 teachers as clinical teachers, and we presently have 54 teachers placed in this model. In addition, teachers from the 7 clinical schools will also be trained in this summer, July of 14. Here's a picture from last year of some college students who are education majors getting ready to tour Chavez Elementary and view a model lesson through one of our learning labs. And then here they are, you can see the view of a classroom. This is our learning lab where teachers who work for us now can watch demonstrated model lessons or examples of instructional strategies, or in this case, college students who are preparing for a career in teaching can watch an instructional strategy or a model lesson and actually have the opportunity to debrief with a teacher who's highly trained and can share with them, even discuss decisions they made during the lesson.
Ken, those are our new labs in Chavez?
These are at Chavez.
Yeah.
If you haven't had a chance to be there, it's quite an impressive, innovative design for a school, and some tremendous teachers who are very open with their practice and model instructional strategies and model lessons for not only teacher candidates, but for colleagues from around the district and from other districts. So I think this should be a real pride point for our district. We'll continue to spread the model and build the model at these 7 schools at this time as our focus. So our plan this summer is to train additional teachers in those 7 schools, build a very solid model in those 7, and then continue afterwards to expand it to include other schools. And this report is provided for your information unless you have questions. Right? Thank you.
Thanks, Ken. Thanks, Dr. Radich.
Can I make a quick comment?
Sure, Chris, go ahead.
I reported on this at the end of the board meeting, a couple board meetings ago, but I've now been appointed as the school board representative to the Teacher Standards and Practices Commission. And as such, I'm on their subcommittee that approves educational programs at our universities in the state. I went on one of their visitations basically because I was still learning about what was going on in those checkups, if you will, and went to Corbin's checkup, and we ended up at Hoover Elementary School watching one of these clinical models. Sort of took Jason a little bit, the principal, by surprise when I walked in the door because he had no idea why I was there, and when I explained I was there with TSBC, he felt a little bit better. But we got to go in and watch this clinical model in operation, and all I can say is that the evaluators from the TSBC group ended up giving them an exemplary rating for their student teaching practice because of that visitation at Hoover. It's a very good model. It really treats teacher candidates, I'm trying to get the new term in my mind too, in a way that they haven't been treated before, and gives them an experience that they haven't had before in a co-teaching model with the teacher in the classroom and them at the classroom at the same time. It's a very, I was very impressed with it. I thought it was a really neat program, and I'm really glad that we're out in front with it.
Any further comments? No? All right, board members, will move on to our next agenda item, which is information, and you'll note at the end of your board plate, we have quite a few upcoming meetings. We're going to be spending a lot of quality time together as a board as we move into our superintendent search process in earnest. You'll note we have a work session coming up February 25th. That starts at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. We'll be out at the Lancaster Professional Center, not here, but out at the Lancaster Professional Center again March 3rd. We've also set aside March 4th and March 5th at 5 o'clock out at the Lancaster offices, not here. Hopefully we can have Christy or Mary shoot us an email to remind us of that. But I wanted to make sure you saw that. We still have a work session set for March 11th and a school board meeting that night, and continuing on through. We've set aside work session topics to be determined, kind of depending on if we need more time to deal with our superintendent search issue. But please note and put those into your calendar. I think Mary sent out to all board members a calendar check for everybody. Hopefully you have reserved those on your calendars. We'll need to be there as we make one of the most important decisions this board will make affecting this school district into the hopefully long term. Rick?
Just to add on the reminder, even though we don't have it on this schedule and the board plate, the week of the 10th is scheduled to be our second interview week too, so.
Right.
I know we all know that, but.
So I'm counting on Mary and staff to send out reminder emails. Hopefully, if you cannot make one of those, please let Christy or Mary know, or Superintendent Radich know, as soon as possible. We do need to make sure that we have a quorum there. And then you'll note we've switched around some of our budget committee meetings because of our superintendent search. So now the last date on there, April 22nd, will be the budget message presented by Dr. Radich to the community. And that'll be in this room, is that correct? Okay.
I believe so.
Okay. Audience communications on non-agenda items. We have 4 folks signed up. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. We are using timers this evening. Paul DeCopolos, our district counsel, has agreed to do that. When the yellow light turns on, you'll have 30 seconds to finish speaking, and when the red light turns on or you hear the beeps, your time is up. If you're a little over, that's fine, but please wrap up after you hear that. When I call your name, please step up to the podium, state your name and address for the record. First person signed up is Anne Marie.
Ready?
Go ahead, Ann.
Chair Green and board members, my name is Ann Murray, and I reside on High Street Southeast. And I am the proud mom of a 2012 South Salem graduate and a current college-bound senior at South as well. And also am the president of the South Salem Saxon Baseball Foundation. And as you may be aware, within the last year, the city of Salem turned over the high school sports field management back over to the Salem Keizer School District. And we recently learned that the district is contemplating major changes to the fees charged to youth sports organizations, increasing as much as $20 an hour per field for baseball, significantly higher for other sports. When our organization first met with school representatives, we were told we might have to pay as much as $20,000 in field fees for this upcoming baseball season, a season for which we have already set our fees and actually are nearly completed registrations. Our organization simply does not have the resources to pay such a fee, particularly in light of the fact that we exist solely to support South Salem High School baseball and Saxon JBO, Junior Baseball Organization, the youth feeder program. We fill a void left by the district and its inability to support athletic programs in the face of other financial obligations, of which you are more than well aware. Our youth program fees already fail to cover the complete cost of operations of our program for the more than 100 kids that play baseball with us, which of course necessitates significant fundraising and sponsor solicitations on a regular basis, year-round. And fundraise, we do. We've established our foundation as an Oregon charitable contribution, a charitable corporation, and as a tax-exempt 501c3 organization to encourage donations. An effort that in and of itself required more than $8,000 in legal work to ensure compliance with state and federal regulations. You have before you a two-sided list of contributions that our South Salem Saxon Baseball Foundation has made, not only to improve the facilities that the high school teams use, but also their programs, and to make the fields safe and playable for our youth program as well. You may not realize that until we took on the project of regrading, leveling, and reseeding the varsity field at Gilmore, that a third baseman's ankles were not visible by anybody who happened to be standing on the first baseline on that field. Very uneven field, not just from an aesthetic perspective, but obviously significant safety concerns as well. As you can see, the list of projects and contributions is extensive, more than $89,000 in project donations, not including a considerable amount of labor. And district staff was impressed to hear of the significant money, time, and labor that we've invested to ensure South Salem area kids have a rewarding and safe baseball experience. And while I am encouraged by district staff's acknowledgement and consideration of those contributions, I fear the proposed fee schedule will have significant negative impact on youth organizations that are not in the same position to make the same kind of contributions that we are. I encourage this board to consider this in establishing a clear and fair policy to extend user fees going forward. The goal should be to encourage participation in and community support of youth sports, not to stifle the same. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Ann. Next up is, I'll probably butcher this last name as well, Laurelyn Andrade? Andrade.
Good evening. My name is Laurelyn Andrade. I live at 1450 23rd Street in Salem. For the past 3 years, I've been an instructional coach at the high school level, following 10 years in the classroom as a math and French teacher. I came here tonight to share with you why I believe that professional learning should be a top consideration in selecting our incoming superintendent. But first, I want to take a moment to thank each of you for your service on behalf of our students and our staff and our community. I know that you have ahead of you one of the most critical decisions a school board can make, the choice of our next superintendent. Effective superintendents need a vast array of knowledge and skills to do their job effectively, from budgeting and liaising with the community to setting an organizational vision and rallying staff around it. While I believe you should most certainly look for these qualities in assessing our candidates, I believe your highest priority should go to finding someone with a solid understanding of adult learning theory and a progressive view toward developing the professional capacity of our staff. There is abundant research to support the notion that teacher quality is the #1 guarantor of student achievement. Moreover, as teacher effectiveness increases, lower achieving students are the first to benefit, making teacher effectiveness also a critical equalizer in ensuring that all of our students graduate and are prepared for a successful life. I see this belief playing out in action in our clinical teaching model that we have operating, but I believe that there's much more that we can do on a day-to-day level with the staff that we already have. In my work as a teacher, I sat all too often through staff meetings and professional development that I knew, even at the time, would make no impact on my teaching. Not because I didn't receive anything of value, but because the structures were not in place for me to transfer that learning to my own practice. I have even been guilty myself, though I hope not recently, of designing professional development experiences that fell short of advancing the practice of the teachers I'm paid to support. Why? Because all too often our professional development and education does not, ironically enough, align with what we know about how people learn. This is especially true of adult learners. So what do we know? We know that adults want to be the origin of their own learning, which means at least occasionally setting their own course. We know that adults want and need feedback, preferably from someone with slightly more experience and expertise. We know that, like our students, adults are diverse in their learning needs and styles, and thus need variety and choice in how and what they learn. And we know that adults are generally capable of solving their own problems, provided that they're given time and space to reflect and collaborate. Incidentally, coaching, unlike traditional sit-and-get PD, addresses all of these points. Finally, we know that the problems of change are nearly always problems of learning. Our schools are in a period of intense change with the implementation of the Common Core and Next Generation Science standards, radical changes in how we assess our students' essential skills, new legislation that makes teacher accountability even more public, and that's just this year. If we need to continually improve teaching, even with all these changes, then we must create and fiercely defend the conditions necessary for staff to continue learning. I know that you, as the school board, can't necessarily see that this happens, but our new superintendent certainly can. I hope that as you screen candidates, you remember that at our core, we are a learning institution. As such, we should have at our helm someone who values the needs of all learners, especially our adults.
Thank you. Next up is Anne Marie Default.
Good evening. My name is Anne Marie Defoe. I live at 1275 Madrona Avenue South. Thank you for the opportunity to testify about the potential increase in fee schedules and how this will impact our community. Although I appreciate the district's acknowledgement of the work done to the facilities at South Salem with the baseball field, and their willingness to work with South Salem High School JBO program for usage. I'm still very concerned about what this means to the continuation of youth sports in our community as we know it. I've shared these concerns with a few of the people on the board. Salem now only has one youth football program. Boys and Girls Club will no longer be doing tackle football. They will continue with flag. But that is a huge void in our community that's been here for a long time. When I looked at the website, the fee schedule would come to $91 an hour for those kids to rent the field for games, which is a significant amount of money. The school district should want to keep students involved in activities. In a time where there's obesity, drugs and alcohol use, gangs, athletics provides an environment where kids are active and engaged and not sitting at home playing video games or out on the streets getting into trouble. Sports participation is associated with higher GPAs. There was a study done at Michigan State University in 2009 that shows that athletes did better by 10% in science, math, English, and social studies. Other studies show as much as 1 full point in their GPA. The study also shows lower dropout rates and a stronger connection to schools. Kids need to learn to fail, succeed, get along with others, problem solve, learn to lead, learn the value of hard work, all the traits that athletics gives to our students. Better yet, these are the traits that will help these student athletes become leaders of the future. A strong community makes better schools, and I have real concerns that if we don't have strong youth programs that do connect our kids to our schools, that people will just choose not to live here. They'll live in bedroom communities like Sherwood and Wilsonville. And many of the professors at Willamette no longer are living in our community. A lot of the doctors are not living in our community. We need those folks to support our schools and those kind of families in our communities. I learned something really important from my dad. He was an educator in this district for over 40 years. And that's, we should always ask, what is best for kids? There's no way, if we increase fees for 501(c) youth sports, that we are doing what's best for our kids in our community. The city of Salem looked at a $5 usage fee a few years back when Portland went to charging a fee. And the city did an analysis and realized that it would make it unaffordable for nonprofits and youth organizations. So I'm asking for you guys to consider, and the district to consider, what this means to our families and keep youth sports affordable, keep kids connected in school so that they continue to be positive in our community and not negative. Thanks.
Thanks, Anne Marie. Last person signed up is Leslie Lindbergh Harper.
Good evening.
Hi, Leslie.
I'm Leslie Lindbergh Harper, 5160 Woodscape Drive Southeast in Salem. And tonight, as president of ASCII SP, that's our classified union here in Salem, for the Salem-Keizer School District classified employees, I want to thank the school board members and Dr. Radich for recognizing the Classified Appreciation Week. So thank you very much.
Thank you. One thing I'd like to say for the folks that were here that spoke on the fee issue, I know that I've received a lot of information. I know our Chief Operating Officer, Michael Wolf, has received a lot of information. If there are concerns and issues surrounding the fee structure that the district is proposing, the district is willing to sit down and talk to any and all of these groups concerning this, and we will continue that. The district will take information about the fees, and we may be able to hold a work session on that in the future to discuss this. But I know that Mike has been meeting with folks and has looked at not only the information from the Saxon Baseball Foundation about their in-kind contribution, but has talked to other groups about their in-kind contribution and willingness to look at reductions in fees or forgiveness of the fees. So we will continue that. The board will take a look at this as well as we move forward with this, and I thank you for being here tonight. Anything you wanted to add on that, Superintendent Radich?
I appreciate individuals coming forward with concerns. I think we need to hear what the issues are. And probably, I think we need to reel back a little bit to kind of how we got where we are. And then how can we prevent this from occurring again? It sounds like there's some issues relative to communication. And also, I think some history in terms of fees, charging fees, and then maybe the public not being charged, even though there is a schedule of fees. And so a change of practice looks like a dramatic change. So at any rate, there are a number of factors that have gone into this. I think we need to do our due diligence as a district to create as fair a model as we can, and understanding and recognizing that the community also gives tremendous amount of positive back to the school district. So it is a partnership, and we do want to work with you. So I encourage you to come forward when you have concerns, and we definitely will work toward a resolution to this. So thank you.
Okay, board reports on activities, board members. Nancy.
This is unusual to do, but I'm going to talk about something I haven't been to yet. But I am going to, on Saturday night, the high school all-city event, and I'd encourage you all to go. It is an amazing concert. It's at North High, and this year they're celebrating the 20th anniversary of the all-city event. So, great time.
Paul?
The middle school program was great. Same thing, a week ago, 2 weeks ago now.
Chuck?
Can't remember the exact date, but the last Thursday night of January, I had a chance to go to the Ike Box and watch the students from all over our middle schools participate in kind of a precursor for Lemonade Day. And it's designed to teach young kids how to be entrepreneurs, and they were selling lemonade like you wouldn't believe. And this is all going to culminate, I believe, the first Sunday in May, where we'll have kids throughout our community selling lemonade and learning how to be how to conduct their own businesses and get started. So it was a good experience. A lot of enthusiasm in the room.
Rick?
So they're going to be selling lemonade right after they do the Awesome 3000 on Saturday, right?
I think that's the plan.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other comments from board members?
And please don't drive by a kid selling lemonade and not stop and buy some.
All right, superintendent comments. Dr. Radich.
Yes, I'd like to echo the board's congratulations and thanks to our classified staff. I think it's never become more apparent than this past week, the value of our classified staff and what they provide our district. In particular, if you'd driven by any of our schools yesterday and seen custodians clearing walkways, bus drivers checking roads, maintenance staff checking our boilers, making sure they were up and running today, looking for leaky pipes. I mean, these folks really keep our infrastructure going every day, and I think we sometimes forget that until we have a snow event as we did, and remember that there are individuals who care deeply and who took their time to make sure that everything was safe for us to return to school. I also want to share, and I've shared with the board briefly, a visit I made to Reprographics and to our central stores. I've been trying to get to all of our schools and sites in the time that I'm here. I just want to say that when I visited with our employees, in particular at Reprographics, those individuals running the presses and printing materials that teachers would use in the classroom were so proud of the work that they were doing. And they knew that the work they were producing would be in the hands of children who were learning. So there's a real connection between the support staff in our school district and really what occurs in our classrooms. I'm really proud of the work that all of our folks do. Just a couple other kind of brief items. I know we've received some questions relative to what are we going to do about snow makeup. We do have some planning that actually is in progress today and needs a little bit more refinement. We hope to have some response and answers hopefully by the end of this week. Also, very pleased that the College Board has awarded a grant to extend the advanced placement program opportunities at McKay and North Salem High School. This will allow for tuition for students who are unable to afford advanced placement courses, and also training for our teachers so we can expand the program. It's a great opportunity for young people at those high schools, and really looking forward to giving them a chance to take some of those advanced courses, and also giving our staff an opportunity to go to school and have that paid for so they can be trained to teach the advanced placement course. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Radich. Nothing else coming before the board. We're adjourned.